So, with the ocean of consciousness metaphor, this is how we show after the fall. The big difference here that makes all the difference is this dark line, dashed line. From here, we can't see our depth. We've lost touch with the depth. We're no longer here. This is not the world we now live in. This is more representative. The big change here is this dark line representing our disconnection from the spiritual. Going back to Van Jones, what he's talking about active people becoming spiritual. Got to get this back. This is where the power and the fortitude lies for people like Martin Luther King to do what they did. They're coming from spiritual center, true center, not up here, not in our heads. Now, let's just take a look at the landscape here. We had evolution based on cooperation in the way things were and ought to be. That leads to abundance and thrival of the fittest. Today, as Brian Swimme, the cosmologist, would say, natural selection is frozen. It doesn't apply anymore. We are in an era of cultural selection. People select. And most people do not fit in best with any others, including ourselves. We have problems even fitting in best with each other. Our relationships, being off-center, often are more a symbiosis, a dependency type relationship. True meeting can only come from our spiritual center of wholeness. We're into capitalism, fascism, which is based on what we know now as a false assumption that the natural world is based on competition. It is decidedly not based on competition. It's based on cooperation. And I might add, especially with the militarism, revenge. What do we get? Where the natural world, as if you read James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohegans, where he describes the Hudson River Valley, the incredible beauty and abundance, that's all gone now. We're in a situation of scarcity and diminished environment. Martin Buber referred to our being cut off as the eclipse of God, or what we're calling generically the one source of all. So, and again, to repeat, Gandhi would call this Brahman. Rumi would call the source Allah. A Native American, the Great Spirit. It doesn't matter the name, as long as it's the one source of all that unites all of us. So, in Dante's trilogy, we've created a hell, and we live in hell, and the hell is within us. It's the wasteland within that is being projected onto the natural world that gives us all of these evil things. Sexism, racism, militarism. And instead of that abundance of life, we have growing dead zones, lifeless areas, huge lifeless areas. We're stuck with mass trauma. All of us suffer from some level of trauma. And we're on the wrong path with growing fascism, even neo-Nazism, and capitalism is not doing us well. Now, perhaps at this point, we should look at the wasteland of the mind. This is a representation of what's called the iceberg metaphor of our mind. Kind of universal these days. As Freud put it, we're like a rider that he called ego on a huge horse that we're only partially aware of. And it's a bucking bronco at times. We need to be vigilant, and we need to become aware of the force beneath us that, and keep it in check. He called it the id. And it turns out Freud was rather shallow. He only dealt with the scientific end of things. He had no spiritual center that we're looking for. Jung went much deeper and went into the realm of the spiritual. But let's, for those without a background in this, let's start with that separation that started this whole ball rolling and gives us, this should be transparent. You should be able to see our true center from here. We should be in touch with this, but we're not. These are like one-way mirrors, self-constructed to a point where we can no longer see our depth. And in fact, we are very much afraid of what's stored in these levels of unconsciousness.